Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Catherine Hoggle. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Catherine Ashley Hoggle was born on November 13, 1986, and lived in the state of Maryland. She was raised by her parents Randy and Lindsay and had 3 younger siblings. When Catherine was in middle school, she started to struggle with her classwork. She was diagnosed with a learning disability, and there were concerns that she may have bipolar disorder. Years later, Catherine was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Despite her challenges at school, Catherine graduated and attended community college. By 2007, she was working as a waitress at a sports bar in Germantown, Maryland. Catherine became romantically involved with a bouncer named Troy Turner. In the fall of 2008, they had a son named Clint. The family lived in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where Troy was employed selling timeshares. Everything seemed to be going well, but then Catherine started having symptoms of paranoia. For instance, she believed that evildoers were trying to break up her family. This belief did not prevent Catherine's family from growing. She and Troy had a daughter named Sarah in the fall of 2010 and a son named Jacob in the summer of 2012. The family moved to Clarksburg, Maryland, and lived in an apartment on Elm Forest Court. Catherine's father, Randy, lived in the apartment as well. By this time, he was divorced from Catherine's mother, Lindsay. In 2013, Catherine became convinced that Troy's sister was breaking into their apartment on a regular basis. She accused her of stealing a pack of undershirts and a plastic toy. Catherine also claimed that Troy's sister had followed her to places like the grocery store, a pediatrician's office, and her mother's house. The state refused to file criminal charges, and a judge would not grant a restraining order. It seemed likely that Catherine was suffering from delusions. Later, when she was driving with Troy in an SUV, she started whispering that the vehicle was bugged. She looked around the SUV for a listening device. Concerned for her well-being, Catherine's family members sought a court-ordered mental health evaluation. On August 13, 2013, the police transported Catherine to a mental health treatment facility. By the end of the year, she was involuntarily committed in another facility. In order to protect the 3 children, Troy enlisted the help of other people to make sure that an adult was always available to supervise Catherine. He did not want her to be alone at any point with the children. Several people participated in this endeavor, including Catherine's parents, her siblings, Troy's mother and sister, various friends, and a babysitter. Catherine and the children spent time in the apartment in Clarksburg, as well as at her mother's house 10 miles south in Darnestown. The system to supervise Catherine when she was with the children appeared to be working. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On September 8, 2014, Catherine's boyfriend, Troy, visited a police station in Germantown, Maryland, and reported that Catherine was missing, along with their 3-year-old daughter, Sarah, and their 2-year-old son, Jacob. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. One day earlier, on September 7, Catherine, her children, and her father, Randy, made their way to her mother, Lindsay's residence in Darnestown. At about 4 p.m., Catherine told her father that she had a coupon for pizza. She asked him if she could borrow his Nissan Rogue to go pick it up and bring it back. As she was speaking to Randy, her son Jacob was clinging to her. She said, "Let me just take him." Randy gave her permission, and Catherine and Jacob left in his vehicle. At about 7 p.m., which was 3 hours later, Catherine returned to her mother's home, but she did not have Jacob or the pizza. She indicated that she had dropped Jacob off at a playmate's residence for a sleepover. Later that evening, Catherine, Randy, and Catherine's other 2 children, Clint and Sarah, drove to the apartment in Clarksburg. At about midnight, Troy returned home from work and went to bed. He did not realize that Jacob was missing. The next morning, September 8, at about 7:30 a.m., Troy's 5-year-old son, Clint, woke him up. Troy noticed that Catherine, Jacob, and Sarah were not in the apartment. Catherine's minivan was missing from the parking lot. At about 8:30 a.m., Troy put his son Clint on the bus and called 911. As he was doing this, Catherine pulled up to the bus stop alone. Troy asked her what happened to Sarah and Jacob. Catherine explained that she had placed them in a daycare facility under some type of trial program. This sounded reasonable to Troy because this is something they had talked about before. He told the 911 operator that the call was a false alarm. At 11 a.m., Troy took Catherine to a mental health appointment. When he picked her up at 2 p.m., he asked her to go with him to pick up Sarah and Jacob from the daycare. Catherine claimed that she couldn't remember the name of the address of the daycare. However, she could show him where it was located. The couple drove around Montgomery County for several hours, but never located the mysterious daycare. At about 6 p.m., Troy told Catherine that they needed to go to the police to report Sarah and Jacob missing. As they were driving to the station, Catherine asked to stop at a Chick-fil-A restaurant on Route 118 in Germantown. After they entered the restaurant together, Catherine went to the bathroom and tried to order a taxi using her cell phone. When she exited the bathroom, she told Troy she needed a refill. He walked back to the vehicle, and Catherine exited out of the side door of the restaurant and left the area. When she failed to return to the vehicle, Troy continued to the police station alone and reported Catherine, Sarah, and Jacob missing. Later, investigators reviewed video surveillance from a Department of Energy building nearby and noticed that Catherine entered the lobby at 7:13 p.m. She left at 4:30 a.m. Her wallet, identification, and a sketch were found in a trash can. The sketch depicted a hand throwing away a minivan and 3 faces of what appear to be children. The police learned that Catherine's story about Jacob sleeping over at a playmate's home was not true. The playmate's family had not seen Jacob in over 3 weeks. Catherine's daycare story fell apart as well. On September 11, 2014, the police found Catherine walking along a road in Germantown and placed her under arrest. She was interviewed for several hours. Catherine told investigators that she gave the children to an old high school friend named Aaron. She did not know Aaron's last name or her address. Catherine was charged with 2 counts of neglect of a minor. Later, she was also charged with 1 count of obstruction of justice and 2 counts of abduction or unlawful detention of a child by a relative. On January 10, 2015, Catherine was found incompetent to stand trial and was committed to a secure mental health treatment facility. On September 14, 2017, the state dismissed all the charges against Catherine and obtained an indictment charging her with 2 counts of first-degree murder. A mental health evaluation indicated that Catherine continued to demonstrate prominent negative symptoms of schizophrenia, including paranoia and impoverished and tangential thinking. The clinician believed that Catherine was unable to assist in her own defense, and she was dangerous. She needed to receive inpatient care. On December 1, 2017, the court found that Catherine was incompetent to stand trial on the murder charges. Over the next 20 months, the same clinician performed 5 more evaluations and continued to believe that Catherine had severe symptoms. In August 2019, the state asked the court for a new clinician to assess Catherine, but the result was the same. This clinician believed that Catherine was incompetent to stand trial and was a danger to others. On February 14, 2020, the results of a new evaluation were examined by the court. A clinician noted that Catherine had been treated with 6 antipsychotic drugs. Each drug had been administered individually as well as in combination with other drugs. She had been given the maximum dose she was able to tolerate. Despite this, Catherine's condition did not improve. The clinician indicated that Catherine would probably remain incompetent to stand trial for the foreseeable future. The murder charges against Catherine were dismissed on November 30, 2022, because she had been incompetent to stand trial for over 5 years. In July 2025, as Catherine remained under a civil commitment, she was discharged from the mental health treatment facility. It appears as though she had been transferred to another facility, not released to go home or anything like that. On August 1, 2025, Catherine Hoggle was arrested at gunpoint and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Her transfer motivated the state to pursue these charges again. The state is prepared to argue that Catherine is competent to stand trial. At the time I'm making this video, Catherine has been denied bond and is working her way through the criminal justice system. Now moving to my analysis. There is little doubt that Catherine suffers from severe mental health symptoms. She has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder. She has impaired judgment, poor insight, disorganized thinking, and is paranoid. Her attorney has argued that nothing has changed with Catherine's condition. She remains under civil commitment. If this is true, it seems odd for the state to once again pursue the murder charges. There will be another fight over competency, and it seems likely that Catherine will be found incompetent to stand trial. She has a long history of receiving that result. Even if Catherine somehow did go to trial, she would have a fair chance of being found not criminally responsible, or NCR. This is Maryland's equivalent of not guilty by reason of insanity. In order to receive an NCR finding, a defendant needs to prove that they did not understand the criminality of their conduct, or they were unable to conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. The standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence, so the burden is on the defendant, not the state, and the standard is much lower than beyond a reasonable doubt. There is little doubt that Catherine actually perpetrated the murders, regardless of whether she is ever tried or convicted. There are many reasons to believe this. Sarah and Jacob disappeared while under her care. Catherine was evasive and provided inaccurate information about their location. When she went to her mental health treatment appointment, she told someone she had just strangled her kids, only to then say she was just joking. Catherine fled from the Chick-fil-A restaurant when she and Troy were on the way to the police station, and she drew a sketch of a minivan and 3 children being thrown away. There was a box on the sketch that contained the term WWE vaccine. Was this a reference to World Wrestling Entertainment? There is no way to know, but vaccines are prominently featured in many delusions, so that part kind of fits with psychosis. Some people believe that Catherine intended to kill her son Quint as well, which is why she showed up at the bus stop. Troy disrupted her plans by being there. Catherine spent many years in a mental health treatment facility. She was asked many times about the location of her children, but she always dodged the question. One time when Randy asked her, she stated, "They're fine. I promise you they're alive. I can't talk about that where I am." Catherine told Troy and Lindsay that she wanted to lead the police to the children, but she never did. I'm pretty sure the prosecution recognizes that Catherine is severely mentally ill, but their argument for her guilt is not based on an absence of symptoms. Rather, they believe that Catherine is exaggerating her symptoms, like she is making them seem worse than they really are in order to retain her status as incompetent to stand trial. Their best hope for proving this is probably how Catherine has repeatedly been deceptive about what she did to her children. This makes it seem like she recognizes the wrongfulness of her behavior and is trying to escape responsibility. However, there could be another explanation. Catherine may be paranoid. The same reason she had for allegedly killing her children could be leading to the concealment of information. The symptoms of schizophrenia are remarkably persistent over time. If a delusion is motivating Catherine to hide the truth, then she will probably never explain what happened. Delusions can be more or less intense at various times, but they rarely vanish completely. A delusion is defined as a fixed false belief, and the word fixed is a critical part of that definition. Furthermore, even before Catherine allegedly committed the murders, she had a habit of withholding information from family members. For instance, she would not even tell them what store she had visited. Hiding information appears to be a key part of her psychosis. Another concerning symptom of schizophrenia is anosognosia. This is a profound lack of insight, which does not change. This further explains why Catherine has consistently refused to disclose what happened to her children. Her distorted perception of reality likely prevents her from recognizing the truth. Moving to the last question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. I believe that Catherine murdered her children as part of a delusion, which came about due to her schizophrenia. If she went to trial, realistically, the only 2 possible findings would be guilty or NCR. It's hard to imagine that she would be found not guilty based on the evidence. If she is found NCR, then Catherine would probably spend the rest of her life in a secure mental health treatment facility. If she is found guilty, then prison would be her permanent home. All the clinicians who assessed her seem to agree that she is dangerous, so it really does need to be one or the other. Those are my thoughts on the case of Catherine Hoggle. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Just a reminder that I have over 300 pre-release videos on my Patreon account. The videos are of the same quality as the videos I release to the public. When I put a video in pre-release status, it usually stays there for several months, if not a year. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video.